All right, we have to talk about this propaganda term, quote unquote, ghost guns, which is nothing more than do it yourself guns, and perhaps some other things. So, specifically, I want to talk about how we deal with these propaganda stories that keep coming up about how police are uncovering supposedly more ghost guns at crime scenes and the like than ever before. Is this really true? And also, there may be some things that that's right, you out there watching this video, can possibly do to help the cause. Stay tuned, we'll go over all of this when we get back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and a nominee, 2 separate categories for the 2024 Gundy Awards, Top Male Influencer, and Top Voice of the Second Amendment. I am honored and proud to be nominated in both categories. All right, folks, so the New York Post, about a week ago, came out with a story that says the NYPD seizes nearly 400 untraceable ghost guns, which is up 710% from 2019. It goes on to say that the New York Police Department has seized 389 untraceable ghost guns so far this year in 2023, which is a 710% surge in such seizures since 2009, when a mere 48 were taken, police stats show. Now let's think about that for a moment. In 2019, 48 quote-unquote untraceable ghost guns were uncovered. So what exactly is this? So we know what's going on, which is, of course, immediately the New York Post quotes a gun control advocacy group, the Brady Foundation, of course, the Brady Center, that says, quote, "It's distressing to see how many ghost guns were recovered by police," is one of the lobbyists for that organization. So, of course, it seems to me what the anti-gun community wants is to establish and show that they have to regulate, quote-unquote, do-it-yourself guns in the name of ghost guns. But there's something here that's not adding up. And that is, there's different ways to consider a gun to be untraceable. First is a gun that could have had a serial number at one point, could have been scratched off, right? Could have been erased, etched off, if you will, by a criminal, right? They could have defaced or obliterated the serial number. Now, this data talked about by NYPD and reported by the New York Post doesn't break down what constitutes an untraceable ghost gun, which again, ghost gun is a propaganda term for a firearm that doesn't have a serial number. So some of these could have had a serial number at one point, and a criminal could have crossed them off, obliterated the serial number one. Or how many guns may have been around before serial numbers were required. Could be an older guns. We don't know. They don't break it down like that. Of course, it could also be guns that were do-it-yourself guns. That's also a possibility. But until we know this breakdown, we don't really know what we're talking about. Are we talking about criminals that are obliterating serial numbers, which has always happened in American history, or something else? Now, they don't want to break down this detail, and the fact that they don't break down these categories the way they should, as I see it, suggests to me that perhaps there's some over-counting here going on by NYPD and other government agents. So we need to really get to the bottom of this to see what's going on here. We should not allow the anti-gun community to claim every single conceivable unserialized or untraceable gun that's uncovered to be a do-it-yourself gun. That's not fair. That may not be accurate, and we want to get the accurate data. But why aren't we getting this data made available to us? Inquiring minds want to know, which gives rise to where maybe you come in. Now, over the years as a trial lawyer, there have been instances where I've had to use, for example, Freedom of Information laws or Freedom of Information Act to try to acquire information from government agencies. Now, usually at the state level, those are called Freedom of Information laws. At the federal level, it's called the Freedom of Information Act. It's all the same thing. Basically, it allows American citizens to make requests of law enforcement or government agencies, clerk's offices, whatever, for information about various topics to make sure that government is functioning with transparency. So it seems to me what might make sense for the Second Amendment community, maybe some gun rights organizations, maybe some journalists that are in the space, whomever's interested, perhaps it makes sense for people in the Second Amendment community to start making these FOIA requests with their local police departments, the county police departments, the sheriff's office, the state police departments, and so on, and try to break down and try to understand how these various quote-unquote ghost guns, what they really consist of. And one of the things that I think you may want to be looking for specifically and requesting about is because a lot of times law enforcement will say, we're not going to turn over the information because it's part of an investigation, right? That's their cute little game they keep playing. That's what we see, for example, where the Department of Justice refuses to turn over information about Hunter Biden to, for example, the House Republicans investigating the situation because they claim it's part of a criminal investigation, and they use that as a way to stonewall information from people that are trying to get it. So if you simply ask about ghost guns, it's possible they'll say, well, we can't really give you that information because it's part of an ongoing criminal investigation, which usually is BS, by the way, but still they get to use that as their pretextual answer for not turning over the data. So how do you possibly get the data? I have a couple thoughts. First of all, what you may want to target is to try to get the information associated with training manuals. How are police officers, how is law enforcement in that community, in that town, in that village, in that county, in that state, in the country, whatever, in that district, how are they trained to deal with quote-unquote untraceable ghost guns? Are they specifically told to indicate, is the firearm that you've uncovered, is it something that had a serial number and it's been obliterated? If yes, then has anyone tried to raise the serial number? Because there are ways chemically to raise a serial number that's been obliterated, and you can still see the serial number. If that's the case, then is the serial number really obliterated if the government can still get access to that number? Is therefore, in that scenario, is that really an untraceable ghost gun if you can raise the serial number chemically or otherwise to actually see what the number is? It seems to me at that point it's not untraceable anymore because you have the serial number. So are those being counted? Likewise, how do they treat do-it-yourself guns? What do they define a firearms as for the purposes of training in that particular jurisdiction? Is it a frame or receiver, which is the definition of firearm under federal law? A frame or receiver gun under federal law has to have a serial number on it because that's considered the firearm under federal law. But certain states and other jurisdictions may define firearm as something that goes bang. In other words, if it doesn't go bang, it doesn't count as a firearm. Let's say in the state of New York or maybe New Jersey, whatever. So maybe the way to do this is to start really doing these FOIA law requests and asking these agencies to turn over information about it. Now, I will also make a general observation. This is just a thought, just as an observation. One of the things you have to be sensitive to is how these FOIA requests appear to the people responding to them in government. And this is the little tip of the trade. If you go in and you put your request on fancy-dancy law firm stationery, and you make it clear, like, we are the litigation counsel for this gun rights organization or whatever, you may make it harder to actually get the information from the government agencies. Because if they think that you're getting ready to sue them, you're getting ready to litigate to the death over the issue, it's quite possible that clerks and other people that might normally just respond and turn over the copies or turn over the information just readily, you may spook them to the point where they choose or reach out to, let's say, an attorney in-house or at their agency to help with the request. And that extra level of formality may make it harder for you to do what you want to do, which is to get the information, to get the documents that you're requesting, and that is counter to your goals. So you don't want to do that. So again, the other way of doing this, and I know there may be gun rights organizations or other organizations that want their names to be prominently displayed on these requests for various reasons, but the other way of possibly doing it is to simply make it look in your letter as if you were a pro-gun control. Now, I'm not asking you to lie or anything like that or be deceptive, not at all. But again, if you write your letter more along the lines of, hey, I'm really interested in doing research on the dangers of firearms and gun violence in America, and it'd be great if I could get this information. Here's what I'm looking for, and give that list. Well, you may have a sympathetic clerk be like, oh, here's a student, or here's a researcher, or here's a PhD or an academic They're going to assume you're probably anti-gun, by the way, and they're going to look at this and be like, oh, yeah, this is like one of us. We should give them that information so they can do good work and fight against gun violence and fight against, gun rights organizations and fight against guns. You see what I'm saying? So if the way you phrase your letter or request under the FOIA laws or the FOIA laws is more sort of sympathetic toward government good works, toward stopping gun violence with gun control, you may make it easier to actually get the information you want. And the goal, again, is to get as much information as you can get about, in this case, ghost guns, untraceable guns, how they train, how they define it, how they declare it, any reports on it, any studies they've done, whatever it is, to gather this information so you can draw these distinctions between what exactly are these untraceable guns and which categories they really fall into, because it's not in the Second Amendment community's best interest to allow all these untraceable guns, whatever they may be, to be lumped together. Now, with all that said, I just want to make one other observation. One other bit of data that is clearly lacking in the, as far as I can tell, in the social sciences, is any real data that shows that these serial numbers solve any crimes. It seems to me usually when a police officer arrests someone, I should say finds a gun at a crime scene, it's one of two scenarios. They break into something like a drug den, or they go in somewhere where there's a crime or something, and they find the gun at the crime scene. Likewise, they find a criminal who's been shot or injured and has dropped the gun, and there's the gun next to the injured criminal who's been shot or hurt or whatever. So it seems to me in those situations the serial number is meaningless, because you have the criminal who's been shot lying there with the gun, or the criminal has been caught with the gun, or you went into the drug den and there's the criminals there with the guns on the table, let's say. Serial numbers were utterly meaningless to solving or addressing any of these crimes. So what's clearly lacking is how many times they find a gun somewhere, they go to an FFL, they trace it back, and they actually find the bad guy. They actually are able to identify the violent thug that did the crime. I'm guessing those numbers are extremely low, which really just proves the point that these serial numbers on firearms are utterly meaningless, except for the benefit of harassing American gun owners and interrupting and hindering our Second Amendment rights, and trying to develop a gun owner registry and a gun registry, which of course is one of the goals of the anti-gunners, because it makes it easier, so they think, to be able to collect the guns. I'm not actually sure how easy it really will be if we ever get to that point. Nevertheless, that's what they think. So anyway, just some food for thought here today. Hope you learned a little bit something. We can talk more about this if you guys put comments before and have questions about it. And again, feel free to share this video, like this video, and make sure you subscribe or resubscribe to make sure you haven't been dropped off the list by mistake. And again, don't forget to follow me, subscribe, and share this video yet again. And again, we'll see you again soon here at the Warbox's Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.